Good afternoon, everyone. If I could call the meeting to order. I apologize for us starting a couple minutes late. What I'd like to do is we're going to move to public comment. And on public comment, we have one public comment, and I'll invite Scott Largent to come up and join us. Welcome, Scott.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Largent. Many of you know who I am. I go to a lot of court hearings just to kind of go in there and advocate for other people that I've met over the first 2 years of my sobriety down here. So I spend a lot of time down at family court, kind of getting feedback from other members of the public. And more people that I've met, I attend their hearings. Normally they're pretty minimal things, but what I've noticed is a lot of women from our family court that have just kind of gone through the ringer of a divorce. I've never been through a divorce. I've dealt with a little minimal amount of stuff at family court. They're pretty traumatized after a lot of those things. And when family court can't control them over a certain period of time, they decide to throw them through our legal system here. And a lot of these women now are being prosecuted, and they're basically saying they're nuts. They're putting them through these hearings in the basement chambers over there at the courthouse, Department 23, and they have to go in front of a doctor's review, and it's kind of a sad process. These gals are pretty upset about what happened to them in court, but they're not crazy. I mean, we're all a little loony in the loony bin, but not like this. Not enough to say, hey, we're not going to represent you. You know, you're going to go to Pescadero or wherever the state hospital is. A gal that I went to a hearing with last week, Tanya McCash, she's had to deal with 2 medical doctors so far that gave her kind of, their little review. And I came there as an advocate for her. She's pretty terrified. She's never had a criminal record her entire life. It's a scary process. So I go there with her. She's shaken up. She keeps going to use the bathroom. She's got diarrhea. She feels like she's going to barf. I mean, this poor woman is just, it's sad to watch happen. So I sit there with her, we go through the whole process. Finally, all the other mentally ill people that are in the courtroom are cleared out, and she's the last one that gets to go up. And since she's complained about the process, they like to stick you in that courtroom for a whole hour and just watch you simmer and sweat. And I went there up to her with the podium, and here we got the podium like this. She's up at the front right here, and I'm standing about 2 feet back right here. And she asked me to go up there with her because she's scared. And the deputy comes up to me, and it's not the normal bailiff. Deputy comes up to me and he says, hey, you can't stand up here. And I tried to explain to him. I said, hey, I'm here to advocate for a friend of mine. She's terrified. He goes, I told you to sit down. So I sit down in the row right behind, not in the attorney row. Bear in mind, no one's there. Then he looks over at me and says, hey, I told you to get to the back of the courtroom. And I'm like, whoa, bud, I'm just here to advocate. I said, look, I'm sitting right here. I said, please stop harassing me. Next thing you know, he lifts me up out of the chair, slams me down on the ground, takes my arm, puts it all the way behind my back. I got to spend a day out at Valley Medical getting x-rays and getting my shoulder checked out that was dislocated and sprained, which is a really nice thing to do since I still have to function in this world and take care of my grandmother. His name's Deputy Colazzo. He came out of academy, I believe, this last route. This guy treats mentally ill. It's sad. And people like this should be fired and reprimanded, and we don't have a system for that. We don't. He'll remain there. You know that, right? He'll remain there. They won't even take him off the line. So it's a failure. Oh, somebody left their little marker thing up here. Clerk of the board?
Yeah, thank you for getting that, Scott.
Thank you.
So we don't have any other public comment. And what I would like to do is move to the consent calendar, and there are a number of items I think that can be put on consent. We will begin with a study session, but then we'll move to item 5, which is our Neighborhood Services Safety Committee, which I think can be put on consent with, we'll ask Supervisor Cortese if he'd like to make any changes to this. Item 6 is the Intergovernmental Relations Annual Legislative Review. I'd like to put that on consent with the removal of our support for AB 2637. And the reason is it provides a one-time $500 high school graduation credit to CalWorks youth who are not pregnant or parenting. And that feels a little discriminatory, and so I'd like to recommend that we not support that until that item is changed, and maybe write a letter saying something like, we appreciate the concept, we like this, but we want to be inclusive, and it really could set a precedent for us punishing some teens and not, others. And so I'd like our staff to advocate for that with that framework for a change. So if they won't change it, it's a no. If they will change it, it's a yes. I apologize for that. On item 7, this is a social services agency budget proposal. I'd like to leave that on consent. Item 8 is a Department of Social Services budget, I'm sorry, let me see, proposed budget proposal and Department of Social Services. Let's see if I'm getting this right. We can look at items 6 and 7. So we put, 7 on consent along with 8, which is the budget plan. So it's the budget submittal and the budget plan. We would leave item 12 of our minutes on consent. And that would be my recommendation.
Is it 6, 7, 8, and 12 then?
It would be 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12. So we would add 5.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm satisfied with the item 5 annual report. I didn't know if there was anything particularly pressing that that the department wanted to share with us. If not, then I would just have one little piece of direction, more of a referral. I had asked my office staff to follow up with the probation department, particularly on this, but I want to share it out here in a transparent fashion and try to loop our chair in, Supervisor Chavez, and that is we've been contacted by the District 8 San Jose City Council office that they're repurposing the small community building in the middle of Welch Park. And I don't know if you had a chance to talk to them, but we wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity to explore the possibility of a satellite NSU presence there or some equivalent presence there, depending on what they decide to do with the building. Obviously, it's their building, but they have invited us in to give feedback on that. And I didn't know if I see nodding heads, so apparently they're already in contact with probation, so that's good. And I know Supervisor Chavez's office will want to be looped in on all that because it's in the middle of their district, among other reasons. So thank you. That's it. With that sort of a referral off the dais, I'm happy to move the consent calendar as you described.
Great. And I'll second that. And thank you to all the staff. It's not a reflection on not doing good work, so thank you. We had a chance to review your documents. So we're going to move to item 4, and this is a study session on Assembly Bill 1227. And this is a Human Trafficking and Education Training Act, and I'm excited that Dr. Dewan is here with us. And we wanted to, so Dr. Dewan is the CEO, Executive Officer, what do they call you?
Superintendent.
Oh, I'm sorry.
County Superintendent.
I was going to give you a whole brand new titles, but the Superintendent of the Santa Clara County Office of Education, and a really great partner for us. So we're excited you're here, and we thought it would be great to get a chance to hear this item with you and get your thoughts and feedback.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you very much.
So if we could, oh, Sharon, there you are. The lights dimmed perfectly. All right, Sharon, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much for including this on the agenda. I'm Sharon Deneau, the Director of Strategic Development for the South Bay Coalition End Human Trafficking. And I was really just here to provide a baseline overview of AB 1227, which is something a lot of the human trafficking advocacy organizations throughout the state have pushed for. It was approved in just last fall, October 7th, 2017. And just caveating to say that I'm really coming from the perspective of somebody who knows the subject matter of human trafficking, but I'm not an expert on educational system. So I'm really looking forward to partnership with our county on that. So the legislative amendment came into effect beginning in January of 2018. There are really 4 key pieces of legislation that have been amended, and I've listed them here. The Education Code 51934 and 51950. And those also relate to the California Healthy Youth Act, that looks at comprehensive sexual education, HIV prevention. And so the major changes there you see is that it's now been expanded to include human trafficking in the sex education curriculum. Also included is continuation training, so CEUs that now include human trafficking. Another major change was for our Welfare and Institutions Code. And again, you see two major components there. That kind of relates to SB 855 that created the CSEC steering committees, and our county opted into that as well. And so essentially for our commercially sexually exploited children program, our local education agencies are now included as part of that working group. In addition, for counties that are developing protocols to look at CSEC, commercially sexually exploited children, if counties have not yet developed their protocol, they're encouraged to include the County Office of Education. Just noting that Santa Clara County already has an approved protocol, and so it would not be, for us, it's an option to revisit protocol development with new partners. So in terms of key components, I've already noted the actual changes to the legislation, but you can see that now human trafficking is included in sex education classes. The language actually says human trafficking, not specifically sex trafficking, and so there is some leverage point there. There's room to talk more largely about the issue. The education includes middle school and high school, so students are supposed to be taught about trafficking age-appropriate levels, once in middle school, once in high school, and the three key guiding points there are prevalence, nature, and strategies to reduce trafficking, techniques to set healthy boundaries, and how to seek assistance safely. It also includes, that third point is talking about training, so CEUs for key administrators and teachers. And again, you see the intersectionality with trafficking, so it's really fused together with sex abuse, sexual assault, healthy relationships, and boundaries. The last point I already mentioned was with our CSEC program, including the County Office of Education and the Sheriff's Department. And actually, the County Office of Education has already started attending the CSEC safety net meetings within our county. Intended outcomes, this is taken directly from Section 2 of the bill. Looks at coordination of various agencies and through agreed upon protocols. It looks at training county leadership, administrators, and educators to identify, but also how to proceed and report once youth are identified as potential victims. It also includes prevention, so looking at student populations and looking how we can incorporate prevention education there. And then evaluation, which is a great piece, also evaluating how well the education and training has been able to help in terms of identification and prevention. Implementation opportunities, so this is really the hardest part of this bill. While we have the mandate, we know that there have been very few districts who've been able to implement this human trafficking curriculum. San Francisco Unified created a curriculum within their county, and it's from start to finish, it's been about 4 years. So we're talking about from the original starting point of talking about the curriculum, getting the right partners together, and now actually implementing. And I do want to point out that San Francisco is one county, one district, whereas Santa Clara County has quite a few districts. So the good news there is that San Francisco's curriculum is actually free, and it looks cross-sectionally at all the different requirements of sex education. So it looks at prevention side, it looks at healthy relationships, sexual assault, and so it might be worth looking at a curriculum as a whole. In addition, there are a few agencies who are providing very specific curriculum that helps fulfill AB 1227. Protect is a curriculum that was designed by 3 different nonprofits, and they were one of the major sponsors of this bill, so they really are in line with the bill. They're currently operating in 13 rural counties. What's interesting there is Protect was really built off of a data collection system as well. So their first aggregate data report is anticipated in April, and so it'll be great to see what results come out of there. I Empathize is another also well-known curriculum that focuses specifically on trafficking. So potential challenges, there's no funding specified in the bill. we were told that the LCFF and LCAP guidelines from the state that this human trafficking curriculum potentially falls under one of the 5 priority areas, and this is really specific to education funding. And so that might be one area to explore finding funding for implementation. Another way is looking through our CSEC SB 855 funding. Another challenge is that, again, data is really lacking in this area, and so it might be worth at least exploring initial data results from various curriculum that are being implemented. And then we have the additional challenges within our county of just have a very, very diverse districts. And so it may be that the County Office of Education has a recommendation that needs to be adaptable to various districts. And I just noted here again that from my understanding is while the Office of Education in our county can recommend a specific curriculum, they cannot mandate the specific curriculum, and I'm happy to be corrected on that, but that's my initial understanding. So the next steps that we really thought about were connecting with our county CSEC steering committee. They're in the best position to kind of vet out various curriculums, but working in partnership with the County Office of Education. And then having our steering committee really take a lead on exploring these implementation options, whether there is any research, starting to touch base with these various organizations who are offering curriculum, and then making recommendations. And then they might also be able to explore the funding opportunities through SB 855. And then, of course, the recommendation of leveraging existing resources and partnerships within our county. That is it. Boom.
But what I'd like to do, so I made an error, and I skipped 2 speakers for an earlier item. So what I want to do is I'm just going to do a little commercial break. And if I could ask the speakers to come up, I want to apologize terribly. I don't want to misuse your time, and I have no excuse, actually. The clerk actually put them in front of me, and no excuse. So Debbie, if you'd like to come forward, and Stuart, welcome. And you're speaking on item 7.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Debbie Pill from Bill Wilson Center, and I'm speaking on item 7 with one particular area, which is the area of increasing transitional housing placement program, THPP. I'm very happy that the county has put in the budget to increase by 5 homes. And the only thing I want to say is I'm hoping that there will be some consideration to increasing it, I would say at least to 10, and I'll tell you why. One of the reasons is currently Bill Wilson Center alone has 6 children on the waiting list for THPP. I am always full in that program. And I also think that we still have about 85, give or take, some children in group homes who haven't been placed yet. They're being assessed for what the appropriate type of placement is. And I think especially now more than any other time, we're going to need a little bit of flexibility to, determine if THPP is the appropriate placement. And of course, we will need more capacity to do so. The other thing is parenting teens. A lot of foster homes are really reluctant to take parenting teens. Bill Wilson Center only has 4 parenting teen beds, and I'm hoping that would be, something for consideration, that we need more parenting teen beds. I'm hoping some of the other agencies who provide this service would consider that as well. And I also think I wanted to just give you a little bit of highlights. One of the things we've learned from doing this program over the years is I look at data. And of all my youth who started in THPP, who went to THP plus foster care, their outcomes for education and employment are much better than for a child or a young person who goes immediately from a group home, a foster home, some other type of placement into THP plus foster care. Oh, rats!
Thank you. Debbie, can I ask you to send that to us?
I have really good data.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay,
Would you
thank
mind
you.
to both Dave and I? Thank you.
Yes, I will.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to come and talk today. Like Debbie, I run THPP, have been doing it since 2006, and I think it's a really good program. I think that our outcomes are good. unlike my colleague, I would like to see it tripled. I think that we need to have more resources for placing kids that are not determined to have a level of care that is mental health in nature, but yet still need some place to be while they transition into adult life. I don't have much more to say because she said it all.
She did good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. And again, I apologize for skipping you. So Sharon, thank you. And thank you all for letting me fix that. I want to see if there are any feedback or comments. And Dr. Dewan, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this subject. I would start with you and then go to Supervisor Cortese.
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here for the joint study session. This is an area that we've had a lot of concerns about, and more recently in the last few years, growing awareness about the impact of human trafficking on our young people, and recognizing that younger and younger youth were being trafficked in our area. What we're aware of as well is that a number of the data sets related to this topic reveal that it's the more vulnerable youth in our community who are most likely to be trafficked, and they happen to be the same youth for whom there's limited availability of resources and supports. I see a very tight alignment to our work in the schools as well related to our responsibilities under the law for mandated reporting. And some of the things that are listed in the bill about making sure that education personnel know the symptoms and the signs and the warnings and indicators, I think can also fit very well in that area. However, I think there's a huge prevention opportunity here when we think about preventing those conditions, the context under which youth become vulnerable and more susceptible to this type of situation. In terms of the curriculum and the items that you mentioned related to the barriers for implementing curriculum, I would agree with your observations. One being that not unusually, a new law, a new mandate, and no funding associated with the mandate. In our county, that's particularly challenging because a number of our school districts are experiencing declining enrollment and are struggling with their own budgets, as well as the fact that the connection of the human trafficking requirements to the sex education curriculum has presented an unusual barrier, and that many communities are uncomfortable with the sex ed curriculum requirements that are already in the law. And we've had some difficulty in local districts and their level of comfort in actually school boards adopting sex education curriculum. So I think one opportunity that might present itself here is to think about the adoption of a particular set of materials specific to this bill that would be separate from the sex education curriculum requirements, to provide teachers and principals with more flexibility in actually implementing this new law. Also, I think that in terms of the curriculum, we would also want to think about the training. This is a difficult topic to share, and maybe isn't as easily generalized in every classroom setting in every community. So I think some particular caution around how the curriculum is presented, trained, and made available to educators to make sure they have the skill set. Also, I would imagine that when the curriculum is delivered, the lessons are delivered, that it might cause youngsters to notice and perhaps report experiences of their own or of their peers. And so being at the ready to be able to respond or provide needed emergency or crisis services for a young person who may be at those earlier stages of trafficking and have not yet found a safe place to report their concerns. So those are some of my immediate thoughts. I do know that the connection to the local control accountability plan and the local control funding formula is a good awareness to have. This type of curriculum could help school districts meet some of the priorities. However, there are a lot of competing priorities for those funds, and there would need to be some necessary community input that would align the use of those funds to something as specific as this, particularly in districts where they're looking to cut positions as a result of decreased funding.
You know, just if I could ask a couple questions. I wonder if you could talk just a little bit more about how just given all of what's trying to be crammed into health and sex ed and the like right now, if you see an opportunity, as we've been thinking more and more about prevention, as to how we can link this into kind of a preventative curriculum overall that really does, you know, take place at very distinct marks and still build in that flexibility. And I'll tell you what I was thinking when I was listening to you is that I was thinking, oh, it's so interesting. One, recognizing that we have local control and that each school board's going to have their own opinion about that. And then thinking a lot about how we help parents understand their role relative to internet safety, for example. So I wonder if you've given any thought to, like, you just have so many requests on teachers' time, what you're thinking is about us thinking about a broader prevention curriculum strategy and what that might look like.
So I think there can be a lot of connections to existing prevention curriculums and opportunities. There are some that are part of the multi-tiered systems of support in our schools under Safe and Healthy Schools Department, where we try to work very closely with teachers, but also with students and helping educate them about internet safety and the dangers of social media. There are certainly connections in that way to the curriculum that is requested here as part of this new law. So I think that the power is in the prevention. I think the sex ed curriculum, however, was also designed to be around more prevention. I do think it's important to think about the parents' role and engaging parents, having opportunities, parent evening sessions, and other ways that parents can become more aware of the issue so that they're also asking for this curriculum, this information to be made available to their young persons. I think it's challenging for parents to have some of these conversations with their children as well.
I see the motivation now for the letter to be written. Someone should do this. Yeah. So, Dave, do you have any thoughts on this item?
You know, what I'm going to say, I've brought up actually previously in the context of LGBTQ integration and more importantly, perhaps the in-servicing part of it, sort of what would be the equivalent of the PROTECT program if you had it in that context. And I know back in the day when Wiggsy Sigurdsson and folks came out to Eastside Union when I was there and said, look, you have none of this, and there was pushback, and there were folks who didn't want to take on any kind of in-servicing whatsoever, even for the faculty. It was really the CTA chapter that became the best advocate and ally, not only demanding that it happen, but they had the power through their collective bargaining agreement, because they negotiated in service days, to say we want one of them to be for this. And I'm just wondering if, as allies for many of us around these kinds of issues, if that might be, I'm not asking for an answer, it's more of a rhetorical question, that might be a way to, one of the next steps is to talk to the teachers associations themselves, even if we can, sort of get get alliances built in some of the larger districts to set an example as to what should be incorporated. I realize collective bargaining doesn't reopen, on a month-by-month basis, but it would be interesting if there were opportunities forthcoming in the near term for this kind of work to be put on the table, and then I think it becomes less about exactly what the school board wants, or which principal doesn't want it or does want it, or which superintendent does want it or doesn't want it. It just becomes part of more of an omnibus kind of a package. So I'm more than willing to help as an individual to do some of that outreach, but I'm sure there's probably a more methodical way to do it than
No, that's a good idea.
just elected officials trying to do it.
I think the alliance that you mentioned is a really powerful idea, because I think it will take this collaboration. The existing groups, CSEC was mentioned earlier, for example, is a great vehicle to help us talk about the possibilities for additional alliances. I also think that having some data that we can use to create a new context around the conversation, because I think some of the information is not readily available to some of our educators, to our teachers, and unless they may have experienced a particular situation with their own student or family, they may not have the awareness. So really elevating that conversation to the teacher association level could be powerful. I also would recommend that we not let money be the barrier. There will never be enough money in public education. So how we might think about our alliances to be useful in removing some of the barriers to implementation. Some of those barriers are the local control and really helping our school boards understand. So some study sessions with CSBA, maybe some model policies would be helpful. And yet, even if we jump that hurdle, then existing really evidence-based curriculums should take the stage versus asking each local district to try to invent their own or create their own streamlined pathway that may be less effective and maybe not really meet the requirements of the law. So the county office can take some leadership in that in terms of supporting model curriculums, supporting model policies. And then I think it's really still very important that we think strategically and with alliance about our shared responsibility to have better outcomes for youth in our county and how we might remove funding and policy as barriers.
So I think just for some next steps, and Bob, I'll turn to you to ask about this, is I think making sure that we do a formal request to the County Office of Education to be on our DFCS CSEC steering committee would be of high value. And what are your thoughts just about that?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Great. So we can make that as part of an action, and then if you can send a formal letter. And then what I'd like to recommend is that after having a conversation with that committee, take a look at what is needed. Where are there opportunities to leverage off of other curriculum? I think that's really critical. Where do we have to build in flexibility? And then, to your point, if there's model work, and frankly, there's some work already done, so it wouldn't take that much work to refine it for the county, for our schools, to then come back when at a maximum, I would say 6 months, but a minimum if you get some areas you want to start working in, to the committee. And there are three reasons I'd be interested in that. One is I'd be very interested in understanding where we have opportunities to leverage. I think that's just really critical. Second, if there are resources needed, what are they? Because some of them will be financial, but some of them may really be the point that Dave raised about how do we engage the unions. I think your point about how do we have a conversation with parents, how do we talk to school board members about this, all of that I think is going to be critical, and those really are resource questions. And then the third, and I think this one, I just want to put it out there, is that I do think that having a broader communication, and this is actually something we need to think about within the county, about how we leverage departments that may or may not be at the CSEC table that are doing other kinds of work. So, for example, I know that the sheriff's office had been taking a look at a deeper dive at curriculum around internet safety. And we have parents who are asking us about internet safety now, and it's broad. It's human trafficking. There's fear about abuse, but there's also, other kinds of, how much information should your kids be putting on? How do you get their passwords? What's the newest thing that you don't even notice it's on their phone that looks like a flashlight, but it's really an app that's terrible or whatever? I just made that up, by the way. I don't know if it's a flashlight, but someone was telling me, look on your son's phone, which of course I did, and I can't remember what the emblem was, but it wasn't there. But nonetheless, I mean, I think all of that has been something that we've really gotten asked to us through other departments, and there may be, again, other ways that we're communicating with schools that we can bind some of this together in a way that isn't threatening, but really is, to your point, both engaging the student and the parent. And then the other point I wanted to raise that you raised that I thought was so right is on the reporting issue. Because I believe even today there is confusion in our classrooms about what a mandatory reporter should and could report on. I spoke to some folks recently who were told by a teacher that the teacher could not report some of what a child told them because it didn't impact the child directly. And first of all, I think it did impact the child. I think it caused trauma. But second of all, I know that not to be accurate. So I think we also have to take this as an opportunity to partner with the schools to talk about things like mandatory reporting, the right number to report to, and what our outcomes will be. And especially because we just changed our DFCS number for the CAN Center. So there's really a good opportunity for us to go out and really roll up some other activities.
Absolutely.
So, great. Good. All right. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm very comfortable with it, thank you. And if I could put my usual plug in for School Link Services
Yes.
and the
Yes.
data bank, what you were just talking about, those are tremendous tools to help sort those things out. If you have them in place. So I'm happy to formally move your direction.
Great.
As you just outlined it.
And I'll make the second. And then, Dr. Dwan, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I appreciate the support and raising some awareness about this, and perhaps one of the resources we may want to add is when we come back is around just an education campaign about the new law, maybe the new phone number, the services and the integration, because I think it would be a great opportunity for more members of the community to learn, where now the channels are pretty limited and siloed. So how we might work together on some type of education campaign.
I think that's great. And if I could add, as you're thinking about that, Dr. Dewan, on your side and on the committee side, the other thing that would be interesting is working with the schools to better understand what kind of information parents want. And the reason is it might be valuable to then present information in a way that marries what we think they're asking versus what we're offering. And I sometimes think it's the same thing, but we're not speaking about it the same way. Great. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Very
it.
nice. All right. Thank you. So we're going to move on then. Thank you, Sharon, very much. We're going to move on to our next item on our agenda, which is item number 9. And this is to receive a report from the Office of the County Executive relating to the 100th anniversary of Armistice Day.
Oh, I was just waiting for eye contact.
Oh, sorry about that. I was looking for my glasses. I took them off.
My name is Steve Preminger. I'm the Special Advisor to the County Executive. I'm joined by Marion Moses, the Director of the Office of Veteran Services.
Welcome.
So we got the referral to come up with an action plan to both celebrate the 100th anniversary, which we know was in part inspired by being at the 99th anniversary of the armistice, where both supervisors were there and saw both the heartfelt enthusiasm and turnout and the opportunity to both celebrate the 100th anniversary, because we always like to celebrate them, but also to promote the notion of our Veteran Service Office and all the things that Marion and her staff do for our tens of thousands of veterans in the county. So you asked us to come back with a plan to help publicize that and to get the word out. What we wanted to do is come back and recommend that we use both speaking opportunities, such as the event this Saturday at Oak Hill Cemetery to unveil the Gold Star Memorial that I believe Supervisor Cortese will be at, and to find other moments like the Memorial Day effort at Oak Hill and others, working with our Veterans Commission and our chair, Fran McVeigh, and other veteran organizations throughout the county. We also want to use a publication that the county has used before. It's something we use to insert in many of the local newspapers in the county. It's a free paper, not free to us, but free to the community, where we can both celebrate the 100th anniversary as well as publicize the great work that our Veteran Service Office does, and more importantly, invite veterans and their families to come on down. So that's what we're suggesting now. I've given you rough copies of an early draft of what the newspaper could look like, and a real rough draft of what the costs could be for that. But again, one of the things that we're looking forward to is being able to up the numbers of veterans that turn out requesting and getting services, and of course money to help them to things they're entitled to. And Director Moses can speak to the Veteran Service Office statistics if you want. We can do it another time, but we think we have good benchmarks to compare 2017, 2018, and then after this anniversary season, 2019, to see if the effort were successful.
The slides on an overhead? I mean, do you have it? Or is it just what we have in front of us?
That's what it is. It's what you have. So we could hold it up to everybody, but it's not,
Gather round.
It's not that impressive.
So here's what I would recommend. And Dave, do you have thoughts on this as well? I'm happy to start with you. That's fine. I don't think we need the presentation yet.
More of an inquiry then.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just curious. Let me say, first of all, thank you and congratulations on getting the benefit numbers up in such a relatively short period of time. And hopefully, to the extent there's need, that continues to ramp up like that. That's really, really heartwarming. When I first got to this board, there were already tremendous cuts going on that almost just decimated the staffing here, and then it became very difficult in this office, and it became very difficult to process, especially given some of the backlog that people were experiencing with not so much locally, but with VA. And that leads up to my question, which is, as we dealt with the frustration of having homeless veterans who were transient moving around, unsheltered, and trying to get them enrolled in benefits, at one point when I say we, I don't remember who all was in the meeting, but we brought in the representative from the Oakland VA who was responsible for that area of work, who indicated that they would literally rubber stamp with an expedited stamp an enrollment application that belonged to a homeless veteran, as opposed to somebody who would be easier to find. And I'm just wondering if what it's been like dealing with them. Have we been able to work with them in that way? And if not, that would be of interest to know, so we could perhaps try to urge them along.
I would ask Marion to address that, but we have put through in the budget year request for positions to help deal with veterans in our court system, veterans in North County, South County, and we thought it would make sense to have a veteran service staff person dedicated to working with homeless people. Now we know we have a complicated budget process with lots and lots of requests coming in, so we're not quite sure where that's at now, but maybe Marion can give you a more direct answer.
Sir, thank you, first of all, for your kind words. I appreciate that. We have been working hard on transforming the Office of Veterans Services in a positive light, and I'm happy to report that at the last CalVet conference, the Santa Clara County Veterans Services Office was indeed named as a model office for the state of California. We also we achieved the fastest granted claim probably in the history of the VA in the month of February, which was filed under a new accreditation we've obtained for the Decision Ready Claims Initiative started by the Department of Veterans Affairs. The claim was granted in 5 days. That's a record. We also filed the highest amount of claims in the state of California in the month of February, sir. So with that, a part of that transformation, as I have stated since assuming my position, was to provide services to all of our veterans, and that includes those veteran demographics that are veterans who are incarcerated, veterans who are participating in Veterans Treatment Court under Judge Manley, and of course, homeless veterans. We have submitted budget requests to provide a trained, fully accredited veteran services representative with full VA systems access to work exclusively for the approximately 600 homeless veterans in Santa Clara County. I have learned that about 400 of those veterans who enter the system, 42 new homeless veterans are identified in Santa Clara County each month.
Right.
400 of the 600 currently in the system were only in the system for 48 hours or less. They came in, sought shelter, and dropped back off the proverbial radar. That is in large part due to the fact that these veterans don't get connected with their VA benefits straight away,
Right.
but they get it's a Band-Aid solution. We need a permanent solution. In addition to connecting them with their VA benefits, it creates a cost savings to the county because that veteran is now using their federal VA dollars to which they are entitled through their service rather than exclusively relying on local or state resources. I have submitted a budget proposal as a part of my budget this year. I'm sorry?
That would address that.
And that will be addressed.
Right. That would address that if it indeed is approved, right?
And if so granted, I have already collaborated with, what's Key's last name? Keeley of the Office of Supportive Housing, and Michelle Covert, whom I work very closely with in my endeavor to reduce the veteran homelessness in Santa Clara County permanently and help those veterans permanently achieve that stability in their lives through VA benefits, through VA health care, education, vocational rehabilitation, and employment ultimately. We would collaborate with them. That position would be co-located while accountable to the Veterans Services Office, because I do have to sign that audit every 6 months. But they would be working very closely with homeless outreach teams so that as soon as a veteran comes in to the Office of Supportive Housing or is identified as a homeless veteran, there is not just an instant, but there is a continuous case management for that veteran.
So I appreciate all of that a lot. In the last piece of it that I'm wondering about, it's probably a yes, no, or I don't know yet, and that is when you have a case and there are enrollment needs that VA needs to approve, and that homeless veteran is on your doorstep. What I thought I was hearing is they're not quick enough because those veterans are dropping out of the system faster than we can get their benefits approved at VA. I'm wondering how much of that is VA was part of my question. I'm not arguing that you don't need the staffing, so don't worry about that. I guess what I'm really saying is if you have this dedicated staff person, how confident are you without some additional pressure that VA is going to respond and turn those applications around quickly so that our new FTE isn't becoming frustrated?
Yes, sir. That's actually, I'm very confident because of the level of accreditation that I require my staff now to hold with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We have full VA systems access. Therefore, we don't just fill out a claim and put it in an envelope and mail it to the VA. We go into the system and we upload that claim directly to the VA in real time. We can then also follow that claim in real time and issue what's called flash messages to the Department of Veterans Affairs, which forces, by Code of Federal Regulations, their hand in expediting that claim. Furthermore, we have an excellent network with the Department of Veterans Affairs, so we can reach out to actual individuals.
Okay. Well, keep us posted on how that plays out over time. I'm sure you will with your reports here to this committee and other reports we're getting as a board, because realizing that is, despite all the streamlining that you've done, that's a whole other bureaucracy there that we have to deal with. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So first of all, thank you and welcome. I'm excited to have this conversation. A couple things that I just want to make sure that we do. One is, I do think that we have two audiences. I think audience A is veterans who may need our support and who are in our community that may not know that they can work with us directly. I think audience B is really the broader public, because we want to engage them in supporting our veterans. And I think there are a number of ways that we can use this plan to do that. I think one is the actual event itself, making an investment both in the event and making sure that as part of our investment, we have plenty of ways to use that, the event and events leading up to it, as a way to capture veterans, you know, in our, and being able to get them services and connect them to the appropriate place for them to get support and help. And so, and then the other thing is, I'd be really interested in addressing the communication plan in a whole number of levels. I am still surprised at how many people access information via their phone. Even our homeless community have access to phones and often to the internet. So I'd want to make sure that the campaign that we're looking at is really mirrored on multiple platforms. And I'm responding to that mostly because of the presentation that's been put in front of us is newspapers, which I absolutely think are critical. Like, I think that's a big part of it, but I want to make sure that we're really layering those. And then also, I think that we should think a lot about what services do we mean to highlight that we think both have the highest need, and that, again, communicate to the public ways that they can connect and help. So I think attending the event, I think volunteering, I mean, I think there are I think we want to really figure out a way to use this anniversary as a way to have the community wrap our arms around veterans, with the county being the lead in that, of course, but I mean, really having the community embrace veterans. So I'll just leave those thoughts with you and let you percolate on them. Will this be coming to the full board as part of budget?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be coming to the full board because it is a financial request to fund the things that we've talked about,
Right.
as well as the things that
But
you've
is it
talked
out
about.
of budget? I know I made the request for this action outside of the budget process. So I didn't know if it was coming back. Do you know? You may not know.
Have to get back to you.
Okay, no problem. The only thing I wanted to make sure of is that if there's any further action that the committee needs to take, if you could let us know, because what we may want to do is whether or not you want to bring back with some of the recommended changes that we've talked about, a final document as part of the budget process to our committee, or if it just can go to the budget process. I don't have a preference. I just want to make sure it's in the process. Let me emphasize that.
We'll work on the process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions?
No, I'm happy to move the item.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and thank you for your good work. It's really very exciting. All right. I had no speakers on that. So if we could then go to item 10, and this is a verbal report from our Social Services Director, and then we'll go to our verbal report from the DCSS Director. Oh, that's right. Sorry about that. I didn't let you introduce yourselves at the beginning. I apologize.
So Bob Minicucci, Agency Director for Social Services, and I just wanted to follow up on a couple quick things around our budget for just some clarification pieces, things that may have changed since we submitted our budget. One was to acknowledge the board and its support for, at the last board meeting, for adding staff related to changes to our programs related to ABODs. And because of the urgency of the change that is coming up, we did need to bring staff on board and have them trained up for that. But what I wanted to be clear is that in the budget request, there are additional requests related to the ABOD changes that are not as time sensitive, but are still important to successfully serving folks in the CalFresh program around these changes. So there's still more in this budget request related to ABODs, in addition to the 10 positions that were supported earlier. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that on the information systems side, our staff has shifted over its supervision responsibility to ISD, and we're an integral part of creating the budget request for the year. So there's some important things in there for our mission, but you'll see that over in the ISD request. So we just wanted to point that out also, and are hopeful for your support for those items too. So as always, we're thankful for the committee's support of our budget requests, and our staff is, of course, available to answer any of the questions that your staff and such may have on this.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Do you have a question? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is something, actually, I wanted to inquire both of our chair and Bob, because it's fresh off the press. I was up at Metropolitan Transportation Commission this morning in San Francisco, and of interest to me, and perhaps to you, was a funding mechanism to reimburse transit operators within the various counties for transit assistance program expansion. And what it would do is reduce fares on a per ride basis by 20% for those in need. And it wasn't clear that, well, let me back up. So a further interest was the fact that VTA, according to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, opted out. And said, we're already doing enough. We're doing enough, and there's too much fiscal risk for us. So the question is, have we heard, were we given an opportunity to weigh in? Because it seems like the population served is sort of cross-integrated, to say the least, with our county caseload. And I know that we, with the programs that we currently have in existence, we work very closely with them hand in glove. The worst case cost to provide 50% of the population with reduced fare rides was $2.8 million annually. And that, the presenter said that it would likely be much less than that because other regions that have dealt with this same kind of a pass were experiencing about a 20% consumer, buy-in rate, if you want to call it that. So I don't know what that would be. I didn't do the math on that, but it sounds like it's closer to $1 million, not 2.8 million. It also struck me that you could cap that program and say, this is what we can afford, and the first so many qualified low-income residents that apply or are referred by the county would, perhaps because they're in certain programs, it could be anything from child welfare to CalWorks or whatever. So could we reach out to VTA and ask, has this gone to, it was also unclear whether it even went to the VTA board. The way they...
I do not believe it did.
Okay, because I haven't been to very many VTA board meetings because I'm an ex officio member, and
Well, I
don't
haven't
vote.
missed one, and I, as you may know, you may recall, we had asked for our staff to work on a transportation plan.
Yes, I know that.
Right, and in partnership with VTA, we'd had a conversation with VTA about whether or not they want to get out of the business and let us be in the business, or do they want to be in the business of providing transportation. So we had a pretty direct conversation with them about that. And what I would request is if the agenda item that was discussed, if there's a report that goes.
There is a PowerPoint, and it says right on there in big, clear writing, VTA opted out. And I think it's a policy issue for the VTA board. But
so if you wouldn't mind, and maybe Betty, we could get a copy of that. What I'd like to do is tomorrow. I don't remember what today is. Today Wednesday or Thursday? Thank you. It's Wednesday. So on Friday, sorry about that. On Friday, we have an ad hoc financial stability committee meeting, and I can bring it up right there.
Right.
And so I'll add it. So if we can get that information, that'd be great. Did you have other thoughts on that?
I just want to acknowledge that VTA, I understand that committee's in play. I think that's the third one historically, and that they can't take, a big risk or a big hit on their general fund. But I mean, to me, that would have further motivated a call over here saying we probably can't afford to do this right now, but is there county are there county resources available?
And that's why I would raise it. That's exactly the point. I think that's and I think Dr. Smith, in reaching out to them, I think he had that at least the initial conversation.
Thank you.
Bob, do you have any other thoughts? Yeah. So let's get it and then better understand the implications of it. That'd be great. And actually, Betty, we can ask Hope to do some homework before Friday. Thank you. So did you want to report on behalf of Ignacio? Sure. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, and I'm so sorry I didn't do that in the beginning.
That's okay. I'm Regina Martin, the Deputy Director for the Department of Child Support Services, and I'm appearing this afternoon on behalf of the Director who is attending CSDA, which is the Child Support Directors Association meeting. And, of course, the budget is status quo, and so we're good on that. But I did want to report out on what has recently been going on in the department. We've recently recruited for 21 vacant child support officer positions, and we've just filled those. We did fill 6 of those positions with child support officer 2s, and those employees came from neighboring counties, well, a couple. One county was Lassen, so we did receive a child support officer from Lassen County, one Santa Cruz, one in San Mateo, one from San Benito, another from San Joaquin, and one from Monterey County. So we hired CSO2s, and I believe that's the first time the department has done that in several years, but we thought it was a good way to move forward, especially since we had so many vacancies. We were able to hire child support officers who already arrived in the department with experience, and we were able to put them on caseloads immediately to assist our customers and then those vacant caseloads. We just hired 15 more child support officer ones, and they will be starting on May 21st. And Bob is probably aware of that because we are stealing a lot of EWs from his department. So we're very excited about the new child support officers who are coming on board. And because our budget is in a better situation, it's in a better condition than it was a few years ago, we are able now to fill those vacant positions and hire staff to take care of the vacant caseloads that we currently have in the department.
That's great. Good. Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
Anything
Any
else?
questions? That's it?
No, I'm good. Anything else? Thank you very much. We are adjourned until I think our next meeting, it's May 9th, and that will be mostly focused on budget. Is that right, Betty? Yeah. So that should be so fun.
It'll be commission work plans next time, but we have a lot of
Work plans and then budget after?
2 May meetings.
budget workshops will be after the committee meeting.
I meant when we start hearing budget items.
Oh, inventory
I think we have 2 meetings in May
Oh, good.
set up.
special meeting on May 24th for everyone.
Got it. All right. Thank you. I was listening to nonprofits across the county listening to this saying, what? All right. Thank you.